Okay, so here's the thing that was bothering me before Passover. Ready?
Yeah.
I take it for granted, like the Shulchan Aruch, that you could take in Shabbos early if you want to, and it's actually a good thing to do, right? And it's also explicit. What's the way you accept Shabbos? What's the official way of accepting Shabbos? The way, basically, before we this whole idea of you could sing Lichadodi or
Shabbos.
yeah, Tzoli. So the Pula Sachir points out that's the way the Vilna Gaon held. The Vilna Gaon himself didn't take in Shabbos early by davening Mariv because he wanted to daven Mariv after Tzei so he could have Kriyat Shema then Mariv. But he totally understood that it was legitimate to daven Mariv, which means the Amidah of Shabbos, and then Kiddush, and then eat. There are later authorities, I think Rav Kabach even fell into this trap and said, yeah, but the meal has to be at night, and night is after Tzeis. So even if you accepted Shabbos by davening right after Plag, davening Mariv, and then saying Kiddush, you could even start eating. We have to make sure that the bread part of the meal is after Tzeis, which could be hours later.
But you can only daven Mariv after Plag if you do that on a consistent basis, right?
No, so I reference you to other sources that we've shown, especially the Gra himself, who didn't hold of this Mishnah Berurah Haggadah. That's another thing that people take. They assume is Chokol Layavor, that if you were going to be davening Mariv before sundown, like on Erev Shabbos, then you have to daven Mincha before Plag. If you're moving your line between Mincha Mariv,
the Rush says that in the back.
No, it's not the Rush.
No, I'm saying the Rush seems to say this. He says if you're going to daven Mariv after Plag, you have to say
no, but not on Erev Shabbos. Then there were later authorities, starting with the Magen Avram, who said I'll backtrack only because you're new to the club. Okay, we saw that there are two ways to interpret that Gemara about the line between Mincha and Mariv. The Rif Rambam approach is there is Shkia. After Shkia is Mariv time. Mincha ends at Shkia, right? Seems that the line is between them. However, the Rambam says on Erev Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos, including Yontif and Motzei Yontif, you still daven Mariv early. That's what it means. Mariv and Lakeva, it means you could daven Mariv after Plag. Your option. Why? Because it's Erev Shabbos.
Specifically on Yontif.
Yeah, Yontif and Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch and others combine a Gemara in Erevin with that Gemara in, it's more familiar the Shabbos/Brachos idea that says that because you have to be consistent with who you're following, pick your Rebbe and stick with him through and through. It applies also to this case of the line between Mincha and Mariv. So, someone's coming in. That's the line between Mincha and Mariv. But the Rambam, as we saw, interprets it entirely differently. So this idea is then combined. The Shulchan Aruch basically holds you have to pick a line between Mincha and Mariv for the rest of your life. Either it's going to be Plag or Mincha. But then the Shulchan Aruch seems to like the Rambam and others. With regards to Erev Shabbos, the Shulchan Aruch says Erev Shabbos, daven Mariv early.
Where can I find this Rambam? Just
it's in Ava Hilchos Tefillah. He talks about the Zmanim. He mentions this right at the beginning, like the second paragraph. He talks about the Zman from the various Tefillos. So the Shulchan Aruch suddenly gives an exception for Friday. So you have people like the Magen Avraham and the great Mishnah Berurah says it's obvious that if you're going to be using this, they call it a kula. Like to say that the language Shulchan Aruch was using. This isn't about kula and chumrah. This is about definition of times for davening. It's not a kula or a chumrah. It's just something you do, like the Rambam has. Either way, they take it for granted that it's davar pashut, that if one is going to be davening Mariv suddenly before its usual time, then he has to also knock Mincha back because there has to be a consistent line between Mincha and Mariv, which is not so clear. As I pointed out in earlier shurim, especially based on what the Aruch HaShulchan says, what the Vilna Gaon says, and what you get from the Rambam. I could have argued entirely the opposite of what the Mishnah Berurah says. It is fairly clear that you don't have to have this hakpada that makes sure your mincha is before Plag if your Mariv is going to be before Shkia, was Erev Shabbos and Motzei Shabbos are exceptions to the rule. That's all. And it's also an illusion that there's a line, like there's a mincha on this side of the line and Mariv on that side of the line. Mincha has its end line, and it happens to be on Erev Shabbos. The starting line for Mariv is moved up. And so what if there's a coincidental point where you could daven Mincha and Mariv?
Why is it moved up? Why is it accepted? Because you can be Makabel Shabbos earlier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rav Tzali so Shabbos. Doesn't say Rav make sure to daven Mincha early that day.
Okay. Is there still some sort of connection, as in like you can't daven Mariv first?
You can't daven Mariv first.
Yes.
Yes. And like the Pula Sachir's point, the Vilna is if you are going to take in Shabbos early, you can't start with Kiddush. Some people have the Yetzer Hara. Start with the Kiddush and eat, and then go to Marav. I used to want to do that, but the Pula Sucker points out that you have to have an official act of accepting Shabbos before Kiddush. Like Marav, really, the Amidah should be first. So if not Amidah, already Rishonim accepted, doing some other act of Kabbalah Shabbos, like saying what we call Kabbalah Shabbos, Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbos, L'chadodi, is just as good as davening Marav. And then you can go ahead with Kiddush in your meal. So this is these are things that you can
But why couldn't it be a declaration as simple as like Hoenili Shabbos?
Yeah, then why can't you do that? Because that's not what Chazal had. Chazal assumed it was davening. It was the Amidah. That's how the Shulchan Aruch says.
Well,
We
but,
saw-
if we're going to depart from that, but by saying that you can say some demo, what
Yeah, why can't it just be a
once
declaration?
once we've eliminated the Chiv Tefillah, why can't it be any?
Yeah, it could be. I'm agreeing with the essential premise of that. I'm just saying the Iker is davening,
Okay.
and there are already some who were very early on said lighting the Shabbos candles, even though lighting Shabbos candles is a malacha. The act of lighting Shabbos candles is malacha. So how could it be performing this malacha? How could it be an act of accepting Shabbos? And then we saw an earlier shir. I put all the sources available
Isn't
online.
it the bracha that is the act of
Kabbalah Shabbos,
yeah.
but then over Las Yasin, after the bracha, you're lighting candles. It's a very hard thing to select the bahag that lighting candles is accepting Shabbos, especially as we saw Rabbi Akiva Eiger points out that you could technically be in a pinch, just like you have to cook your food at noon because you're going on
I
Mishmar.
know many of the earlier started posting hold that you light and then you make the bracha. Rav Ovadia flips it
Yeah.
because he says the halacha seems to be like that.
Yeah, they did that. But that's all the assumption somehow that you have this contradiction that the lighting is accepting Shabbos. But that's a very weak thing to say. It's not in Chazal. That's more of that's like a folk religion type of thing. Like women, they know the last thing they do is hadlik was an air. So lighting candles is the acceptance of Shabbos, but that's not the way the poskim held. Shulchan Aruch was aware of this, but what does he hold in 3 places and explicit in Beis Yosef? What is accepting Shabbos? Marav. And then we saw, even though it's very explicit, but you could go see it, people forget this. The Shulchan Aruch holds Sarich Lahosif Mechol HaKodesh, which means that there's a natural time where Shabbos starts, right? Shabbos is going to start, let's say sundown, whenever that is. Then it's a different machlokas. When is the sundown? But everybody says sundown.
We just got into this today.
Yeah.
Whether it's to feel like the beginning of it's dipping in the sky or like the end
Yeah.
of it's dipping
By
in
the way,
sky.
that's very quick. I mean, we don't hold of a long, hour-long skier process. That's a real chiddush of Rabbeinu Tam. The point is, there's a natural time when Shabbos is going to start, and you can't resist. And then there's a time where you could do Tosefes. And the Shulchan Aruch says, Tzarich lehosif be'el chol HaKodesh. He's not alone in this. Who disagrees? Rambam and Vilna Gaon. And they say the only time you have to is Yom Kippur. All the other Shabbos is in Yom Tif is an option. Shulchan Aruch says, Tzarich, every Shabbos. So put these together. The Shulchan Aruch says, the way to accept Shabbos and Yom Tif early is what? Mariv. Davin Mariv. And the Shulchan Aruch makes it very clear in many places, and you can go, I put all the sources available for you. It's unmistakable. Shulchan Aruch says you have to take in Shabbos and every Yom Tif early. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch felt every Shabbos and every Yom Tif of the year, you're supposed to take in that Shabbos or Yom Tif by davening Mariv before the natural time when Shabbos or Yom Tif starts, and of course before it's usually time to daven Mariv. That is a Shulchan Aruch, black and white. You could argue against it, and you could say that others disagree. That of course others have other nuanced opinions with this regard. But according to Beis Yosef, that is a fact. And by the way, who held like this? Am Yisrael forever. At least when I was growing up, that's how we took it Shabbos. That's we do every Shabbos here. We daven Mariv well before the sun sets, and we take it Shabbos. Now, there's been a tendency in later Judaism to avoid this on certain occasions. The first one, of course, is Shavuos, because there's an idea which the rabbi has already knocked down, but which is very late. This is only became an idea 100 years after the Beis Yosef died, that you can't take in Shavuos early because that'll destroy your count somehow. It'll impinge on the final week. It won't be a tamima. You know this idea. Now, this is a late idea, but even some men like Rav Avi said Ashkenazim have to hold to this. They can't daven Mariv early on the night of Shavuos.
It's in the Mishnah Berurah.
It's in the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah doesn't say a requirement. It says Mishnah Berurah says, yeah, there's a minhag to delay davening Mariv so for tamimos. Because the Mishnah Berurah is a complete book. It has to mention every minhag that exists. Does the Chafetz Chaim hold that Ladina? If the people were trying to accept Shavuos early,
It doesn't matter. People think that the
more statements in the Mishnah are in fact leading than actually are.
Okay, I don't know, but my point is, this really took off. It's a footnote in the Mishnah Berurah, one line in small print, and people think like this is chok v'lo yavu. So why this come up? Because Passover started this week. For Sukkot also, there's a very late Hekesh, which is not the Talmud saying you have to do the mitzvah of Sukkah dafka at night. You can't take it Sukkot early and do the mitzvah of Sukkah because it has to be at night. It's connected to Matzah and Maror and Pesach, which is also at night, which we're about to see inside, is also questionable. Either way, it's very hard to get people to tell them that, yeah, let's take in Passover early. Why? Because we're going to see. What about the mitzvahs of Passover? So I understand that Shulchan Aruch held Passover is a type of Sabbath. As a matter of fact, if you say Passover is not a Sabbath, you're a Karaite. You're a Saduki. That's a Machlukas Chazal and the Sadukim. Is the first day of Passover a Sabbath or not? We hold halacha. Yes, it is. And therefore, we take in Passover early.
The Karaites didn't hold it was a Sabbath.
The whole thing, when did they start counting Omer? Saturday night. Saturday, Sunday morning.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Why? Because it said Sabbath
Yeah.
means Sabbath Bereishit Saturday. Yeah, Malchus Shabbos. We said Shabbos means a day when you don't do Melacha. Every yomtov is a Shabbos, halacha, and has the same dinim. There's only a few dinim where it's not the same. The punishment you give to someone who violates willfully, violating Shabbos is death. Well, actually, skila, so I shouldn't be slitting my throat. And the punishment for push them up. The punishment for violating yontif is Malchus, not even kares, just regular Malchus. Kares Malchus. Yom Kippur is kares with Malchus. Okay. What happens? Also on Yom Tov, there are more heterim. There are less malachas on the list. Instead of 39, it's reduced, right? But Yom Tov is a Shabbos, so you could take in Pesach early. Now that is something that it's hard to convince people of, but eventually you could show them like 4 different places in the Shulchan Aruch where it's explicit. The Beis Yosef, it's explicit. The Talmud basically has it. If you want to split hairs and say no, Rav Tzoli shel Shabbos, but not Yontif. The whole thing of taking in Shabbos early doesn't apply to Yontif. Then you could argue such a thing, but no one ever said such a thing, and it's foolish to do so. Okay, so you could take in Yontif early, but what about telling people about the mitzvahs of Pesach doing early? I've been trying to argue for many years that here's the problem. When you study Ari Pesachim, that first page, you read the Tosfos is on the right. And there they have a few opinions of Tosfos that many people associate, I found that subconsciously, with the Shakla Vitaria of the Nsuin Gemara. You guys know Ari Pesachim? Used to be. What?
A couple of months ago.
Good. So here is the issue that I found. That those 2 pages of Ari Pesachim, the first ones, people forget what the bottom line, what the conclusion of the Gemara is, at least the different, like the general idea. And then they associate with a few conclusions of Tosfos, which are brought by the Rush, which are quoted basically by the Beis Yosef, and then put as halacha. So that is what people are familiar with. That's what they know as halacha, and they assume chok v'lo yavu. But the problem is, in other places, you find that major Rishonim and Achronim disagreed with most of the essential premises and came to entirely different conclusions. The conclusions that I advocate for, and you can find them in the Gemara in various places, and the Rambam. But the Rambam came first, so the Rambam couldn't disagree with these Tosafists in the Rush and explain to them why they were off.
Wait, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
this is what we were talking about?
We're gonna
It's not
tell you in a
the
second.
Same thing, it's on like what you can eat when, right?
And a few other stuff. There's a few other things.
Okay.
So one of the first things there we're going to see this inside is, I just like to point out that what is the main idea there? Machlukas Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, which is that, wait a minute, what's so special about Erev Pesach that I shouldn't eat? I'm not supposed to have a special meal on Erev Shabbos every single day, every single Shabbos, and every single Yontif. So what's special about Pesachim? It says, Erev Pesachim, don't eat, right? Until Shetech Shach. So what's the Chiddush? So the Gemara there, yeah, well, it's also one on the bottom, but you can bring it. The Gemara there.
That shelf, yeah?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
The Gemara comes to the conclusion that whereas on a regular Erev Shabbos, you're not supposed to have a meal after a certain time. What's the halachas of Erev Shabbos? No real special meal on Erev Shabbos, period. That is, you can't get together with your friends for a very special breakfast on Erev Shabbos. That's not your regular breakfast. You know why? It's not a Sudas mitzvah. If it's a Suda Bismana, like a bris or something, how you got to take it off the edge of the table, farther, okay? If it's a special Sudas mitzvah, so you have that on Friday, but you can't, let's say, get together and say, I want to have a barbecue with the guys Friday morning just because. That's sticking it to Kavod Shabbos. You can't do that. It's forbidden. Next, you're not supposed to have Kaviyas Suda after a certain time in Erev Shabbos and Erev Yontif. Everybody agrees. So what's the Mishnah's Chiddush when it says this also regarding Erev Pesach? Conclusion of the Gemara is, on Erev Shabbos, you're not supposed to have Kaviyas Suda, but you continue eating until Shabbos starts. You can keep eating raisins and almonds and some tomato or whatever it is. Just keep eating. Whereas in Erev Pesach, you're supposed to stop. Posek. Now, you're not supposed to eat. The Rambam understands this Gemara like the earlier Rishonim, which is an Erev Pesach, already from the afternoon, you're supposed to be mar-even. Talmidei Chachamim mar-even esatzma, with an ayin, which means they would actually hunger themselves, starve themselves, so that they eat the matzah l'te'av, which is what the point of the Mishnah is. When it says ad shetechshach, the Rambam has it, until you start your seder, don't eat anything. And the Rambam doesn't hold of Tainus Bechoros. So when you have other cases, he said, you're not supposed to fast on a day when there's a special korban for Am Yisrael. It's called Erev Pesach, Yud Daled Nisan. There is no such thing as Tainus Bechoros. If you find a great man like Rabbi Yehuda Nasi fasting on Erev Pesach, it's not because they're firstborn and it's a fast of the firstborn. It's because they were trying to hold like the Rambam and starve themselves so that they'd eat matzah l'te'av. That's Rambam's understanding of the Mishnah. Now, Tosfos asks this question. I'm going to read it in the Rush as brought by the Beis Yosef. Okay, this is an important line. Aside from one that maybe Shmuel could see in one of the earlier Tosfos, which says, Rabbeinu Tam says what regarding matzah? You can't eat matzah on Erev Pesach, but that's specific to
The matzah
that you motzim ba yidei chova.
Yeah, Yotzei.
Now, tell me in the Gemara where it says that. It doesn't.
Talmud Yerushalmi?
No. The Talmud Yerushalmi, like the Vilna Gaon says, the Vilna Gaon brings,
And ladies.
no. The Vilna Gaon says, you read the Yerushalmi well, you'll hold like the Vilna Gaon, the Rambam, which means like the Zohar. This is the one time where I found it's machlokas everybody except for Rambam, Vilna Gaon, and Zohar, which hold that,
Haraya, the Rambam have Zohar.
which is, as Rav Kappa points out also, all matzah is forbidden on Erev Pesach. All matzah, all day. There are some Rishonim who daik in the Rambam, the matzah is only forbidden once the chametz becomes forbidden. Like, 10:30 in the morning. No, it's an all-day prohibition. 2, it applies to all matzah, including matzah ashira,
I hear you.
and including matzah products. That's what Vilgon says, which is why on Erev Pesach, which is Shabbos, you have no way to do Shalosh. You have no way to do a Suda Shlishi. Why not? Because there's no pas you can eat. You can't eat chametz pas because it's chametz, and you can't eat matzah pas because that's a form of matzah, even if it's matzah shiro or pasaba b'kisnin. If it's pasaba b'kisnin, that's chametz. It's sweet, and if you sweeten it up and it's matzah shiro. So the Vilna Gaon points out Zohar Rambam l'shikasa. There is no form of pas that you can eat on Erev Pesach afternoon, especially on Shabbos. There is no way to do shalosh, period. The Rabbeinu Tam felt, no, matzah yotzim ba yidei chova. The question that the Vilna Gaon says about, Tosfos there is, koach kushyasam. They came up with this rule because of the koach of their kushya in Tosfos, but you could have given a different answer. There's nowhere in Shas which says that the prohibition is strictly matzah that is used for the mitzvah. On the contrary, it's pretty clear from the source material in the Yerushalmi that all matzah b'mashma. Okay? And the Vilna Gaon continues with this.
What's the alternative answer?
The alternative answer?
Yeah.
You have to ask their kushya. Maybe their kushya doesn't have it, but you could read it in there. I'm going to read it in the Rush over here. The point is that they were asking, what do you have to eat? Tosfos was asking, what is there to eat? Anyways, what pas?
Right.
So the Rambam says, I'm not even talking about a meal, because Tosfos was assuming it got to be a meal. What are you going to eat? You have no pas. So the Rambam says, of course you're not eating any pas. You're not eating nothing. It's not just pas. Perish Mishnah over here, behind here. I'll read you this Rambam on the Mishnah. Behind the glass, here, first move the books away from the glass. I'm going to read this, Shmuel, you there? The translation in the printed version obviously needs to be corrected. Rav Kapach has a better translation, which is, a little bit better.
Translation, I don't know.
Perish Mishnayos. No, you have Perish Mishnayos there. You have a Vilna Parish Mishnah down at the bottom left,
It's in Hebrew.
bottom left. Zroyim and Moed.
Yeah, well, no, it's in a separate section.
Here.
This is what that's trend, no?
This is
That
Rav
book is in
Kapach
Hebrew.
Parish. I'm going to read you what the Rambam says about the Mishnah,
There's
and then
no
you'll see
Arabic in
that
book.
where the starts.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the translation.
By the way, if you get something confusing, stop. Okay. So look what he says here. Samach lemincha. Kishnishar minyon yoser al shatayim mechzos manios. Tells you time. Don't eat after mincha. 2.5 hours left in the day. What's called mincha ketana. Okay. V'chiyavnu kach lefi shachilos matzah laila rishon chova. We told them not to eat because the mitzvah to eat matzah at night is an obligation. Lefichach mar'iv atzmo kedei sheyochalena b'teavon. He starved himself. Not like a regular Erev Shabbos where he just doesn't have a kaviyah suda. An Erev Pesach, you're not supposed to eat at all. That's what he paskins in Hilchos Chametz and Matzah. V'zeh shemina'uhu milechol eino achilas pas. Okay? When it told you don't eat, preventive meaning, it wasn't don't eat pas. Sharei eino be'es pas. No, as pas. He has no pas to eat anyways. The chiddush of the Mishnah is not don't eat bread or you don't make kaviyah suda. There is no bread to eat anyways. Pas is a very general term. It covers why I tell you 4 things, which are pas above the kisnin, that's chametz, mizonos types things, cookies and cake, and pas lechem, which is regular bread, and then it covers matzah lechem oni, which is the unleavened equivalent of regular bread, and matzah shira, which is the unleavened equivalent of pas above kisnin. She'asur etzlenu le'echol matzah b'yom arba'asar ad she'uchlena be'es hamitzvah. Okay, he says it's forbidden to eat matzah. That's why he has no pas to eat, no chametz, no matzah. No matzah shira is an option. Rabbeinu Tam felt it's an option. Ella mina'uhu milaharbos b'shar ma'chalos. When the Mishnah tells you don't eat on Erev Pesach, it means don't eat other things. Mine targimo. Rabbeinu Tam felt, you could see Rabbeinu Tam there on one of the top Tosfos is saying,
Right.
no, it meant don't eat pas. And the Rambam says, what do you mean don't eat pas? There is no pas to eat. Rabbeinu Tam said, yeah, there is pas you could eat. Rabbeinu Tam's assumption is the Mishnah must be talking about don't eat pas. What pas is there available to eat?
He brings up
Yeah.
Gemara on Kuf Zayin Amid Beis,
Which is,
meaning Targima you're allowed to eat.
yeah, he does mention that. He mentioned minar targima is what you eat with the bread. Everybody holds you could eat minar targima, technically speaking. Other things, what are you going to dip with your bread? The dips of the bread, or what is it? You could eat fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
meat, but not bread. The point is,
If you're allowed to eat those, then it has nothing to do with starving yourself.
So that's Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says you could eat other stuff.
So then how does the Rambam read that Gemara
So-
over there?
So we'll get to that.
Okay.
Hopefully we have time to get to that. Okay, but that's what the Rambam says here, and that's what the Rambam says also in Halach. The paskins, you're not supposed to eat. So you could continue reading this over here. My point is, let's see if we can agree on this one. Rabbeinu Tam says the option of Pesach afternoon is matzah shiro, and that's where we got this rule of pas matzah shiyotzim b'yidei chova, which is really awkward because that's an expression that most people associate with the halacha, but is not held of halacha by many. Foremost among them, the Rambam and the Vilna Gaon. So the last time Pesach was an Erev Shabbos, do you remember what the yeshivish thing to do was like the Vilna Gaon? Eat 2 meals in the morning while you could still have chametz, right? That's what they did in your yeshiva, I guess. But they don't tell you it's because we don't hold like Rabbeinu Tam. But a lot of people do hold like Rabbeinu Tam. You probably assume like Rabbeinu Tam that matzah shira is what there is to eat on Erev Pesach. That's the first idea that people assume. And by the way, this gets into something that's even deeper. According to the Rambam, the Vilna Gaon, there's a continuous mitzvah every day of Passover to eat the matzah. Where did they get that idea, by the way? Hold this thought. Everybody says the mitzvah of eating matzah is the first night, right? Vilna Gaon is medayik in the Rambam. Mitzvah kiyumis, a continuing mitzvah, not obligatory, all 7 days long,
Yes.
up to the last minute. And the Vilna Gaon himself had a shalosh shudas on the 7th day, like we saw last year. Vilna Gaon says there's no such thing as shalosh shudas on Yontif, generally speaking.
Well, the
Maybe you learned
Rambam
it-
holds that it's.
Well, the Rambam holds of shalosh shudas in 2 places, which I'm surprised when people try to touch up a Rambam. It's very clear. The Rambam says it, and it says 3 places. The Rambam says that there's shalosh shudas on Yontif. So he doesn't mean that. So what do you mean? He says your yomtov Suda should be just like a Shabbos Suda, 2 kikaros and this and that and everything, and 3 of them. All 3 of the Sudas should be. What's the Rambam talking about otherwise? You'd have to start chopping up his sentences in order to say otherwise. The Vilna Gaon proves from the 7th day of Pesach, proves from the 7th day of Pesach, no chiyuv of Shalosh Shudas on yomtov. And then the Vilna Gaon did a Shalosh Shudas on the 7th day of Pesach. Yes, Edus. The Vilna Gaon used to do that so that he can get in more eating matzah. Because it's a continuing mitzvah. So you learn 2 things for the Gemara. There's, even if you don't have an obligation on yomtov to have a Shalosh Shudas, it's a mitzvah, and you can do it. Because it says that the Vilna Gaon on the 7th day of Pesach would eat matzah at the end, have another meal, so he could get in more mitzvah of eating matzah.
No, I missed the part where we said that it's that he held it was a kiyum mitzvah. How did he know it was a kiyum mitzvah?
How did the Rambam know? The Vilna Gaon says within the Rambam that the mitzvah of matzah continues for 7 days. I'm going to show you where the pasuk says this, and it will also prove a lot of other points. So now we see the already divergence. The Rabbeinu Tam Tosafos way of understanding what you do on Erev Pesach afternoon is you could have matzah shiro, and you're not trying to starve yourself. You're just not having a meal, right? And you can eat matzah. That's how it says the Rabbeinu Tam had Shalosh Shudas when Erev Pesach was Shabbos. How did Rabbeinu Tam have Shalosh Shudas? Matzah shiro. And as long as lo yitzum b'yedei chova, I wouldn't take advantage. I think the Vilna Gaon's rejection of that Rabbeinu Tam within the Rambam and the Zohar and the Yerushalmi is very clear. You could take out the Vilna Gaon to Simon Tuf Mem Dalet. It's up there in the Shulchan Aruch. You could see it. You don't have to read it now, but the Vilna Gaon says V'chein Iker. The Iker is like the Zohar and the Yerushalmi. There is no pas to eat on Erev Pesach. Period.
Who makes that thing?
What?
Voilà.
Well,
How are you allowed to have turkey? Turkey.
how are you allowed to? Really, you shouldn't. You're supposed to starve yourself. That's what the Ram says. Minahu milechol, everything else. You're not supposed to eat Erev Pesach afternoon.
So how does he read that?
So read it. We'll get to it.
What is?
Yeah, okay, don't worry about it. When I went to Bigdal and I was telling you about Hillel sandwiches, one guy said, "This what you're saying doesn't
I
agree
would
with
say
the
it's not a
Bavli." He said, "No, it's 100% not the Bavli. It's Yerushalmi." We'll get into it. Don't worry. Okay, but you're asking a good kasha. Either way, so now we see that's one essential issue. People assume, like the Shulchan Aruch says, matzah yotzin b'yedei chova. Like I said, the Talmud never said such a thing. That's Rabbeinu Tam's Kiddush, and the Vilna Gaon rejects it. L'maaseh says you can't eat, and the Rambam also would say, "Look, you get malchus for such a thing. It's like it's a malchus mardus. It's like they say, and they say it's as though you did a different avera, right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty severe language. Okay,
Question from what
yes,
you said
please.
before.
I need some water. Where's my cup?
Did you pray Mary before?
Yeah,
All the tefillah is related to the night, so everything you say is at work, not related to the physical reality.
okay. So you're assuming the Birkos Kriyas Shema. I'm talking about the Shmon Esrei. The Shmon Esrei, you say the Birkos Kriyas Shema, which talks about Ma'ariv al Ravim.
Right.
You only say after nightfall. Most people are familiar with also is Rabbeinu Tam who said when you're davening a Ma'ariv early before sunset or before it says, say Birkos Kriyas Shema also.
Not only
But we don't do that.
He holds that's because of B'nai Ashkenazim held according to the price and not according to the Mishnah.
Yeah.
And we just read this in Rabbeinu Yana. I think Rabbeinu Yana says you can say the brachas before. At least I think he says before it says but after Shkia.
Okay, but the point is, what Andre's saying, but that's still a contradiction. If you were davening Ma'ariv while the sun is shining, what do you do with Ma'ariv Aravim and Hashkivenu? It all sounds like nighttime brachas. The answer is don't say those.
Right. Well, but it's separate dinim for me than the Kriyashma. Yeah.
Like the Mishnah Berurah, even this is the Mishnah Berurah says, if you're really davening Ma'ariv early, don't say Kriyas Shema and its brachas with everybody else. Wait until after it says, and everybody in the know does it that way. Okay, the old minhag. Okay.
So if you go to one of these Sephardi shuls that some of them daven Ma'ariv like very early when like after Shkia, but when the sun's like still out,
Yeah,
or the sun's still illuminating the sky, you should skip Kriya Shema and just have an.
just be quiet while they're saying it. Yeah,
Right.
that's a Mishnah Berurah at the end of Chelik Aleph, Chelik Beis.
Wait, the Rishonim say Lamaisa, but
Yeah, but the Mishnah Berurah reminds people like this is the old way of doing it.
But even after Shkia or just at the brach?
Even after Shkia,
Yeah.
until it says, and if it's not time to say Kriya Shema, don't say the brachas. So this is something I tried to avoid doing. But-
yeah, I remember now.
Yeah.
Rabbeinu Yonah says you can say the brachas just without the psichos and the chasimus.
Yeah, okay, which means you're not saying brachas.
Yeah, you're reading the text essentially.
Yeah, okay.
Also, to say the bracha hashki benu before it's mashkiva is like, well, difficult.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no
And it
psichos.
doesn't talk
There's no-
about.
Unless you're a
that's-
teenager, teenagers sleep at all times, they basically, they go to sleep, lacrosse, on the Melosa Shachar, and they wake up at Chatzos or whatever, it's Mincha Katan time, right? Okay,
Say Krishna from chakras and nothing.
basically, or they're really Hasidish. I know some people, they went Hasidish only because they couldn't do anything on time. It's like saving face, like, I'm not late, I'm Hasidish.
Unless you became a Breslover and you daven nade.
There was a guy who can never accept Shabbos Bizban, never ready for Shabbos. So what do you say?
Yeah, of course.
I hold like Rabbeinu Tam. He's always taking Shabbos, like, even though, you hear the siren here and everybody's davening Mariv, it's Shabbos. He's like, Rabbeinu Tam, man. Okay, you can do that, but
It's not everyone's one of those. He held
Yeah.
the Chumrah and the Kula.
But
Good.
Rav Moshe came to
That's what he used to do.
Rav Moshe came to a deal with him
in New York,
Yeah, because they said
Keep
you,
like the
you
Gra.
keep Kol Yisrael in your yeshiva. If you keep Kol Yisrael in your yeshiva, I'll keep Shia according to the Gra. And they made a deal.
Oh, and they actually fulfilled it? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
That's why none of the Satmaras actually take in Shia at 58 anymore,
Oh.
because they all do it on time.
yeah, in New York, thank God, there's, at least officially, the people who are supposed to be keeping Shabbos, taking Shabbos 18 minutes before sundown, or at least by sundown, they're not doing anything. Okay, so I have in front of me the Divrei Beis Yosef. I'm gonna read it inside. I'm sorry you guys don't have copies, but I don't even have a tour here. But you can call it up on your phone. If you have a phone, you can find a copy of the Torah Beis Yosef to Siman Tuf Ayin Bet, which is funny that the printers left it Siman Tuf Ayin Bet, because Tuf Ayin Bet spells something that's not nice. Just like in your printed versions, you don't have Siman Shin Mem Dalid or
Yeah.
Siman Reish Ayin Bet, right?
Mhm.
Because they spell not nice things.
Mhm.
The
Wait, what does Tav?
Tuf Ayin Bet spells Ta'iv. Ta'iv means disgusting.
Ah.
Like the
Oh,
word To'eva. Yeah, Ta'iv is like Ra'iv means hungry. Ta'iv means, repulsive.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'm surprised that they left this in here. It should be Siman Tough Bet Ayin, but even Tough Bet Ayin spells Tava, meaning, charge something or sue someone in court for something,
Mhm.
or solicit. But either way, it's not as bad. It's better. Or what about Bet Ayin Tough? Does that spell anything? That's not a word, but eighth.
And you-
Time of.
Maybe you take a yod out of the eye.
Yeah, okay.
See.
We're getting, the wine's getting to us. Okay, fine. So, like I said, these are ideas.
What did you say this was? Shulchan
Oh, no, Beis Yosef to Orach Chaim, Tough Ayin Bet.
So it's on the tour.
I find that if you want to study Shulchan Aruch, I tell people, study the Beis Yosef. You don't know what he's talking about. It's okay to study Mishnah Berurah, but first know what the Shulchan Aruch meant in his Lashonos, which you're not going to understand if you don't study Beis
Well, I was
Yosef.
gonna say Carl wanted people to do that, and then
Yeah.
nobody listened to him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why the Maharil takes issue with the Shulchan Aruch, because like no one's going to study anymore. Everyone's going to ignore Shas and
And they're not going to know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You'll have the ridiculous
Yeah.
event where I was trying to tell people when the Shulchan Aruch says a royal levana b'chidusha, right, says this bracha, the person who sees the new moon says this bracha. The Beis Yosef already explained in a few places elsewhere that what he meant was Rosh Chodesh. That's what the lashon means. But because the word Rosh Chodesh doesn't occur in the entire siman, people aren't aware that the Shulchan Aruch holds the halacha that you're supposed to say the bracha of Kiddush Levana on Rosh Chodesh because it never says Rosh Chodesh, right? I'm familiar with this. I put out a whole book about this. But if you'd read the Beis Yosef or read the Kesef Mishnah, you would have been aware of what the Beis Yosef meant when he wrote this. And it was ridiculous. I don't know, that led to real craziness.
It's why many of the many later people were like, don't read the Shulchan Aruch, read Shas. Which
Well, I don't know, but you have to know how people paskined. So here is the Beis Yosef we're talking about, because the Beis Yosef here will give you opinions, the known opinions, but he won't give you the implied other disagreements. That's why you need a Vilna Gaon to take it apart. You need to read the Rambam and be like, But the Rambam already disagreed with this. He didn't need to, pipe up. So I'm going to do that now. First, he says a rule that we all know. You should have, well, let me put this on the screen for everybody. Share screen. Here. Okay, everybody can see this. He says that you should have your table set and ready to go. Why? Yes, shulchano aruch mi ba'od yom. Mi ba'od yom, everybody agrees, means while the sun is while it's still the previous day. Set your table for Passover. Why? Set mitzvah lemaher. Mitzvah lemaher v'lecho b'shvil hatinokos. You have to start eating quickly for the sake of the children. Now where's that din? Well, luckily the printers put it for me. It's daf kuf tes. Everybody agrees with that halacha. That's explicit chazal. You're really supposed to get your seder going. You're supposed to get your seder going to the eating part for the sake of the children. Okay, I was at a seder one time, I recall, where the Baal Seder was so excited. He's educator and everybody like that, but it was real teark on the children who were. It's already 9 p.m. It's like, when do you get to the food part? So that was good, but maybe it's not. I was going to say this can't be tircha de tzibur because it's just a private seder. Well, if it was a tzibur, then you could tell him, but you can't. There's no tircha de mishpacha or tircha.
So what should you do? You should go to the park quickly, start eating, and then
No,
children.
no. My thesis is you should take in Pesach, assuming you don't have Korban Pesach. I'm going to put my cards on the table right now. If you do not have Korban Pesach chas v'shalom, because you're tamei or derech choka, of course, because everybody else does Korban Pesach. If you're tamei, derech choka, or some other form of anus, like the Rambam says, then you should take in Passover as soon as you can, like any other Shabbos, and get going with your seder. And if you happen to eat your matzah even before sundown, matova manoim, and that's what the Rambam would have done. Okay, and there's even a pasuk in the Torah which says you should do that. So that's what my thesis is going to be. And the reason why you can have a whole book and people are unaware that this is there is for the following reason. We all agree that you're supposed to lemaher lechol for the sake of the children because that's what it says in Shas. The Shulchan Aruch continues. Aval, the Beis Yosef. Lo yochal kodem shetechshach. Okay? But don't eat before techshach. Eat as fast as you can, but not before. Techshach. Now, when is techshach? As those of you who are following what I was trying to do with Leon, finding all the places in Shas, including Yerushalmi and in Toseftas, etc., where Chazal imply what techshach is. And the conclusion we came to, after bringing all the sources, which I have in a separate file, and if you were a Baki B'Shas, you could probably prove this to me also on your own. So I don't know Shas cold like that, but I did save the sources and I did make it available on YouTube. Techshach, according to the sages, was Shkia. Okay, Techshach equals Shkia. And that's the way it is in the Rambam in a few places also. But the problem is later they have Techshach as being Tseis. Not only that, they have later opinions about when Shkia and Tseis are.
In certain places in Brachas, Rashi seems to use techshach as meaning dark and stuff like that when he's interpreting.
Yeah, when darkness starts to happen. Techshach is a verb.
No, he uses it
Yeah.
daf for tzeis, I think.
Daf for Tseis?
Yeah.
Then please bring it to me. But I was trying to save examples in Shas where it says that. There's explicit Yerushalmis about that. Okay. What did you say about Eliezer? Oh, that Eliezer. There's 2 Shmuels and 2 Eliezers here, so we have a little bit of a problem. Okay.
That might have been the end of the.
The old guy.
Oh.
Okay. There's Bacher Shmuel and Saba Shmuel.
Oh.
Okay. So let's continue. If you have, like I said, I want something to argue with me. My point was, I take it for granted because we already proved this point that Techshach in Rambam and in Shas means, like Yerushalmi, means Shkia. But that's not the point. Let's assume. Let's assume that they're saying, he says you can't do this before this line. The Rambam would agree that Techshach is a line, right? So the Beis Yosef says, even though you're supposed to hurry up in Erev Pesach, don't do it before Techshach, whatever that means. Okay, save that. But the point was, he drew a line. Not before. Hurry up, but not before time X on the clock, right? Why is that? And then he says, wait, I could have asked the Kasha. Afagav devishar Shabbatot v'yomim tovim yecholim losif bechol hakodesh. And what we say that was, normally, Shabbos and Yontif, isn't there a general rule? Hosif bechol hakodesh, and which means daven and eat. Kiddush, you're saying Kiddush with Suda, it's very hard to say that I could say Kiddush 20 minutes before Shkia, but then have to wait to eat. We assume that, Kiddush and then you eat. So that's what the base is saying. Even though normally you would have said it's a yontif, take it in and start eating. For Pesach, you can't eat before Tech. Where does he know this? Pesach shiny, Dizman achilas matzah eno ela balayla. Pesach is different because the time for eating matzah is at night. Wait a minute. So I could say Kiddush. Kiddush is not the same as eating matzah. Technically speaking, I could say Kiddush and 20 minutes later start eating my matzah, right? Beis Yosef will answer this. Okay? So he's equating Techshach with Laila, whatever that is. By the way, we saw many times already, the Rambam says, let me just use the Rambam. The Rambam says the beginning of the night is Shkia. The only times you wait for Tzeis, for nighttime mitzvahs, is Kriyat Shema, letting out Shabbos and Yom Kippur, and Hariv Shemesh, because those are explicit in the Torah. Every other time we saw in the Rambam, so don't make me have to go over this again. Okay, fine. But every time we saw in the Rambam says Tchilas Halayla is Shkia. And that's a din for Ma'ariv, and that's a din for everything else under the sun, especially mitzvahs to Rabbanan. Which is why there's a real stretch. Suddenly everything under the sun becomes what? Tzeis, including every Rabbanan mitzvah also. And the Rambam says, we pointed out in previous times, Sfiras Omer, what is it from? Shkia. Even when the mitzvah is Doraisa and it came with Ketziras Omer, they're doing the Korban. When did they start Ketziras and Sfiras Omer? At sundown. They have to heart. Yeah, but it says what? Yeah, but it says Bahashemesh, but they waited for sundown to start the Omer process, not Yatsu HaKochavim, Yatsu HaKochavim, Yatsu HaKochavim. Question, yeah.
Perhaps I'm just flatly wrong on this, but I thought that I thought that Lamaisa we pass can also for Tainus that you have to wait till it says.
The Tainus of Reb Kippur. And Chazal included Tisha B'Av in that. And we saw that Dafka Chazal say the opposite. All the other Tanaisim, for Tisha B'Av, Sfeiko Aser, all the other Tanaisim, Sfeiko Mutter. And then they said, the Tainus Shilo Shakal Abachama. So in a few places, Chazal say a fast day ends at sundown. But for Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, you add and you end it at 6. The Beis Yosef acknowledges this fact also. He says that. So why are people not here for Tzeis every fast? Rabbeinu Tam. Because we don't know Rabbeinu Tam Shkia is, so we just wait for Rabbeinu Tam's Tzeis. Wait a minute. So the only reason waiting for Tzeis, according to the Shulchan Aruch himself, is because you're holding up Rabbeinu Tam's definition of all these times. But if you don't hold the Rabbeinu Tam's definitions, then you just revert to the original.
So you're saying that I can go and start eating at Shkia for the Hab?
You should. There's no reason to be machmir. It's explicit. It's an explicit, Gemara in 2 places.
My apologies.
Yeah, I've been trying to tell this also for people for a very long time.
Unless you just want to wait till everybody serves dinner anyway.
I do not intend to ever keep another one of these fast days again in my life. So it's not really halacha l'maisa. Right? Except for Yom Kippur. Okay? The way I'm looking, my view of the future of our history is that those minor fast days are going to be a thing of the past. No reason for Bahab or anything. God will Malch Hashem Dima Mi'al Kol Panim. So the only fast we'll have left is Yom Kippur. And that has to go until it says because Yom Kippur is special. So the Rambam says this in a few places also. Tainus Esther, there's no real reason for that. It's like when everything is good again, Messiah comes, we have a temple. We won't have Tisha B'Av, we'll keep Tainus Esther.
Esther is not.
Maybe. Okay, you want it, you can have it. I don't want it.
Esther is not in here.
Like I tell the Israelis around here, I greatly prefer those days on which I can eat to those days on which I cannot. Look, thank God, I fast.
While I'm good at fasting, I should get it in.
Yeah, well, I'm good at fasting. Thank God, we're still healthy, and fasting has a lot of advantages also. But it's not something I go out of my way to do or want to do. So I've been telling people the fast day. The last time we had a Asar B'Teves, I tell people very clearly, Asar B'Teves is over at Shkia. It says that in Shas. It says that in the old halacha books. It's acknowledged by the Beis Yosef. The calendar printers, I tried to call them up and tell them, could you just please, you do everything like the Gra, you have the Gra's Manim. The Gra says in 3 places, the fast day is over at Shkia. There was a guy who tried, corresponding to me in my emails, said that long bear Gra is basically implying there's a chumrah, every fast should be over, it says. But I point out, later the Gra says, rewrite the entire Gemara
So the only fast that this doesn't apply to is Yom Kippur and
Tisha B'Av,
Tisha B'Av.
which they Chazal say explicitly, those go until it says. Every other fast goes until Shkia. That's explicit. So, and like I said, the Beis Yosef acknowledges this, the first Beis Yosef on Hilchos Tainus. Yeah, so now you have homework to do. So my point was, it became fashionable, halachically speaking, just be machmir all over, all across the board. So my thesis is that techshach means shkia. By the way, what the Shulchan Aruch says here, in the name of, he's quoting the Rosh, who's quoting the Tosafos, is that for the mitzvahs of Pesach, you have to wait until techshach, whatever that is. You can't start doing the mitzvahs beforehand. Why would that be? He says it has to be balayla. Very simply enough, the mitzvah, even the Rambam says the mitzvah of matzah is balayla. I'll tell you now that when the Rambam says balayla, he means as opposed to Yud Daled Nisan. But in Achinabi, just like the Rambam says, the mitzvah of Kiddush and Sudan Shabbos is balayla. And then he says lav dafka. Just like Mariv is balayla, which we learned on Shabbos and Yontif is lav dafka. So too, when we have the mitzvah of eating matzah, leil pesach, lav dafka. And we'll see a pasuk that proves this point. That's what I'm waiting for, the big ending. Okay? The surprise. So the thing that is almost missed, I think that Tosfos quotes it not according to the Trop. And the way the Rambam Vilgon apparently understand it is according to the Trop. Okay? If you follow the Trop, he wouldn't have said it like Tosfos says. He would have said it like the Rambam says. So why does he say this? He says, Kain Kosaf HaRosh. The Rosh wrote this. The Rosh said, there is a border. You cannot start your mitzvah of eating matzah before a certain time, even though you have to hurry up and do it. Where do you get this? Because the Mishnah says, Lo yochal adam ad she techshach. What does the Mishnah say? A man shouldn't eat until techshach. That's arvei psachim, lo yochal ad she techshach. And the kasha was tema. Amai tana ad she techshach tvei mibi arvei shabbatot v'yamim tovim. Why is it? The Gemara already dealt with the issue of how is Pesach, Erev Pesach different from other Erev yomtovs with the whole no eating thing. And the conclusion was Erev Pesach, you're supposed to eat a lot less than a regular Erev yomtov, whatever that is. We already saw that machlokas. But now they ask, why did the Mishnah add techshach? You shouldn't eat until techshach. What's the chiddush of that word? So Rabbeinu Tam answered, the Tosfos answered, and this is quoted by the Rosh, V'yishlomar, de atala ashminon, it came to teach us, Afal gav de Shabbatov yamim tovim, yachol osif mechol hakodesh, v'lechol kodem shetechshach. The assumption everybody has, other Shabbos and Yontif, by the way, this is before anybody imagined that Sukkot and Shavuos would be an exception. There's hundreds of years before those ideas came about. Normally you would have said, yeah, you could eat. You take in Yontif early, eat. Kodem shetechshach, while it's still sun is shining, right? Like we do in this house. Kedamrin perak tefilas hashachar, like it says in Maseches Brachos, right? Be'erev Pesach lo matzi achil ad shetechshach. Erev Pesach, the Mishnah is telling you when it threw in the word techshach means you cannot eat. Lo matzi achil, lo motzei she'ochel lifnei techshach. That's what Tosfos says in the Mishnah. What we see is the Rambam's interpretation of this Mishnah, though. You remember what we just saw in the Rambam? And he says, by Mashma Rishalmi, but that's it means in Tosefta. There are Toseftas also, which the Tosfos used to try to show this. The matzah has to be eaten at night. We're going to see, no, lav dafka. What did Tosfos interpret? What did Rambam say? The Tosfos say that the Mishnah says, lo yocha ad shetechshach. No, which means don't eat before techshach.
Right.
But the Rambam said, what's the chiddush of this Mishnah? Not just shkia.
That you can't eat anything until
You're not supposed to eat shetechshach. But normally shetechshach is, when Yontif starts. But you have the option to make Yontif start early. The point of the whole Mishnah, according to the Rambam, was don't eat until Yontif comes in. But in Chinami, the Rambam said earlier, you could accept Yontif early every single day of the year. And by the way, Tosfos acknowledged that. Said it must be Erev Pesach's an exception, and that's what the Mishnah is getting at. But that's, once again, this rule of the Tosfos came from Tosfos's kashas. Why Tosfos have this rule of matzah shiyotzim b'yidei chova from the koach kushiyasam, and why they come up with this idea that techshach is no eating matzah before this line, as opposed to no eating anything before this line. Why? Koach kushyasam. The way they ask a kasha on the Mishnah, and they have a diuk. It must be the Mishnah is implying this. But once again, this bottom line over here, which the Beis Yosef brought, which the Rush brought, which everybody assumes is fact, is non-Talmudic. It's not an explicit line in the Torah, in the Talmud. Now I have the Toseftas here say also matzah eno nechal the Pesach eno nechal ela balayla. That's in Tosefta Pesachim, and it's also in Ezahu Mikoman in Zvachim. Pesach is only eaten at night, right? So Tosfos say night mashma tzeis and night dafka. But what do other people say Ezahu Mikoman is telling you? As opposed to the other korbanos. Normally, when I have a feast offering, some korban that I eat, when am I supposed to eat it? When do I get to eat it?
On the day.
One day and one night. Or
Yeah, the day it's shechted, plus the ensuing night, and sometimes the ensuing day. The Chiddush when it says Pesach enu nechal balayla is that, like the Rambam brings halacha, you cannot eat Pesach the day of the 14th of Nisan. You're supposed to wait until it's halachically the 15th of Nisan.
Yeah.
But in Achinami, if you accept yomtov early, now it's good enough. The same thing is said in the Tosefta regarding the matzah. The matzah is only eaten at night. But once again, the Rambam will tell you, means because you're not supposed to eat matzah on Yud Daled. But on Tes Vav, that's when the lads it. But if in a Chidami, like all the other mitzvahs, just like the mitzvah of Zochrei al Yain, what's the mitzvah of Shabbos? Mitzvah Doraisa, Zocher v'Shamor, right? It's a mitzvah Doraisa. How did Chazal institute you keep this mitzvah Doraisa? What's the rabbinic way of keeping the mitzvah of Zocher? Kiddush. That's a rabbinic way of doing the mitzvah Doraisa. And the Rambam has many examples of that. There's a mitzvah to remember Amalek. The rabbinic way of doing it is by reading the Torah. There's a mitzvah to anything else. Give me another example. There's a mitzvah to say Kriyat Shema. The rabbinic way is by having it with brachas beforehand and brachas afterwards, right?
Sure.
That's a very Rambamist way of describing these things. So too, just like I do the mitzvah of Zochrehu, the mitzvah of Zechira Shabbos, I could do on Friday. It's halachically Friday. The sun is shining, yet I daven Ma'ariv, I say Kiddush. I have fulfilled my biblical commandment of remembering Shabbos while it's still technically Friday. And it's not a contradiction. So too, there is room to say, and I'm going to show you why I say this, there's a room to say that the mitzvah of matzah also can start once I accept Pesach. Okay? I haven't proved that theory yet. And he brings some various proofs over here. And then he brings the Avi Ezri. What?
Is there anything that says that Zohar must wait until it is the nighttime?
No. As a matter of fact, that's what we would say. The assumption of all these Rishonim, which can't go against the explicit Gemara, is Rav Tzali Shel Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, and also Mikadesh. Kiddush is Zochreu al Yayin. Everybody did this.
Says that it must.
No, Tosfos are inferring from the Mishnah, based on their kasha, that it must be Pesach. The matzah has to be Dafka Balayla. Because it says matzah in a few places, the mitzvah of matzah is balayla. So it must be when the Mishnah mentioned techshach, lo yocha anshe techshach, it meant dafka, as opposed to other yom tovim where you could take yom tif early and start doing your yom tif mitzvahs or your Shabbos mitzvahs. Okay, that's the koach of their kasha. And then the chumrah of the Truma Sedeshin is that even more than that, Kiddush itself, because you have Kiddush with eating your matzah, they're connected somehow. Kiddush can't be before it says. Which means that the earliest time you can start your seders now is Tzeis. Even though the assumption was at the very beginning, hurry up with your mitzvah of Pesach. You don't like that?
I don't think that follows exactly.
I know it doesn't. That's why when the Shulchan Aruch brought this Truma Sedeshin, Kiddush after Tzeis, because somehow it's connected to matzah, it's only a chumrah, but not ladina. Okay? The Shulchan Aruch mentions these ideas.
Pesach, matzah, and mar are all grouped together.
Yes.
For those.
I can understand. It says balaylo.
Should wait till night.
They should eat the meat at that night. But what's wrong with Kiddush? Normally, Kiddush we just go, Rob, it could be even like
the separate.
Yeah.
thing.
If you would do Kiddush, just the way I'm saying, let's say you hold like Tosfos, matzah have to be after Tzeis. If you don't have the Truma Sedeshin's chumrah of Kiddush after Tzeis, you could have taken in Passover early, like all the other Shabbos, and said your first cup of wine, your first Kiddush, the first kos, while the sun is still shining, and you'll have maybe an hour and 15 minutes until you get the tzeis, and then you can take out your matzah. And at 7:40 here, tzeis was what, 7:40 or 7:30 something, night of Pesach, and that would have been perfectly good according to the Tosafists. But instead, we had places where they really machmir all across the board. So I'm going to jump to the final thing. Listen, somebody has a question right now. I'm going to ask for a chumash. The Tosafists say one of the proofs to the matzah eating at night. Why do you know you're supposed to eat matzah at night? Matzah at night. It says achlu asabasar b'layla zeh. There's two psukim that talk about the time of eating korban pesach. The first one we saw earlier before we were, before mincha, which was what? That pasuk. Sham tizbachas a pasach ba'arev kivo hashemesh moetzes chami b'tzrayim, which says that the time for eating korban pesach is shkia.
Yeah.
And if a person needs hariv shemesh, he went to mikveh that day, and he's only going to become tahor at tzeis, so he can only eat the korban pesach after tzeis, but that's a din in him.
Yes.
That's not a din of the korban pesach. The other people who are tahorim could have eaten at shkia. So it seems to be a pasuk very clearly that the time for eating pesach starts at shkia, and that's halachli laila. The Rambam would say you don't have to wait for tzeis. The pasuk says wait at shkia, and shkia is when the night starts anyways in like 4 different places, so it's fine. But here's where it says here, where it says two psukim, eat the pesach b'kvo hashemesh and v'achlu es habasar b'layla hazeh. That night you're going to eat the meat. What's the pasuk that tells you zman of eating korban pesach, matzah? The pasuk talks about the zman of chilas matzah. I'll show it to you. So I was trying to argue with the rabbi 2 years ago. We didn't have time to show it inside. Okay. Remember that whole thing about Tosefes Yom Kippur? What's the pasuk of Tosefes Yom Kippur? Someone know it by heart? So Parshas Emor.
Well, it says that he keeps it in Yom Kippur on the 9th.
I'll read you the verse. And that's verse is brought in a few places in Shas. It's the same. Oh, no wonder it's so hot in here. Can we make the air? Good, thanks. Can you put it to like normal temperature? Okay, thank you. What is the verse in Vayikra? It's actually used for 2 things. Someone who's astute, someone should tell me. What are the 2 rules about Erev Yom Kippur that we learn about Erev Yom Kippur? Who knows? 2 rules about Erev Yom Kippur. Anybody? Here's what it says. Shabbat Shabbathon hu lachem v'nithem et nafshotechem. It's a Sabbathon for God. Afflict your souls. B'tish'al chodesh ba'erev, may erev ad erev, tishbethu shabbatechem. From the 9th in the even, the erev, hard to translate, from erev to erev, observe your Sabbath. It says from the 9th. So Chazal say, wait, the 9th. You just told me it's be'asor la chodesh hashviyah. From on the 10th is Yom Kippur, and it says from the 9th, from the erev, that's when you keep your Sabbath. So first of all, this is against the Tzedukim and the Karaites who say that a halachic day begins with the beginning of sunlight. Rabbinic Jews hold, like the pasuk here, it says that the rabbinic day starts, the halachic day starts with the night portion of the day, the night half, the dark half.
So do you know if the Rashbam says?
Yes, on Bereshis.
Well, how does he justify it in the context of?
That's not halachic. We were given our calendar with Yitzias Mitzrayim, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. So it was a redefinition.
So the Karaites, the Samaritans, and the Tzedukim all.
Their Shabbos starts Saturday morning, like at when the light comes out, when daybreak. Yeah, Samaritans do not observe Leil Shabbos. Their Leil Shabbos is Motzei Shabbos, and they sit in the dark. The Karaites, sorry, and they don't eat cholent. Okay, so
What's the point of being Jewish? You're not going to child.
well, yeah, they ask you the questions like that. What's the point of a Jew if you don't build a canopy in your house on Sukkot? Okay, so what are the 2 things that you learn from Shas in a number of places? Shmuel can fact check me on this one. What do you learn from the 9th day? On the 9th day in the even, keep your Sabbath. What does it mean there? 2 halachas, 2 doraisa halachas. 1, you're supposed to eat on the 9th. Because you're afflicting yourself on the 10th, how do you afflict yourself? Don't eat. Dafka on the 9th, you must eat. And we have an obligation. That's why the Rambam holds the halacha. Person takes a vow not to eat on the 9th of Tishrei is like a person who vows not to eat on Shabbos or Yontif.
one of the categories of Shvat.
Shaw. Yeah, so like,
Right.
yeah. So one, Chazal say, what do you learn from the ninth? When it says the ninth, on the ninth in the even start your Sabbath, your great Sabbath, Yom Kippur, it means that the ninth is dafka do the opposite of what you do on Yom Kippur. That's the first limud. And then the next limud is, but also called Tosefes. The whole basis for Tosefes Yontif and Shabbos is learned from here, from Yom Kippur, which is you have to start your Yom Kippuring while it's still the ninth day. You guys are familiar with this halacha. That's an obligation. Even the Rambam and the Vilna Gaon agree to this. You have to start Yom Kippur while it's still the ninth. Wait a minute, aren't those contradictory things? I just told you two things that are right there in the Gemara and Yoma and in I think Brachos other places. The ninth is not Yom Kippur, correct? So most of the ninth do the opposite of Yom Kippur, but the end of the ninth do just like Yom Kippur. All of the ninth day of Tishrei, eat and eat and eat, but then stop. Start Yom Kippur early. So you learn two things, two halachas from this one pasuk. Pop quiz. Someone repeat what I said. How is the ninth connected to Yom Kippur? In two ways.
Because you need to do the opposite of what you're going to do on Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
And you also need to start Yom Kippur from.
Yeah. So they're sort of contradictory. One tells you no Yom Kippur, one tells you yes Yom Kippur. Wait a minute. So now you understand this. These are explicit in Shas. There's a din. Don't eat matzah on Erev Pesach. Where do you think Chazal got that idea of don't eat matzah Erev Pesach? Oh, it's a good idea. It'll help you build an appetite. So build an appetite. Why did it say usser? Chazal said
Yom Kippur, you're supposed to do the opposite of what you do.
Yeah. So I'm connecting Pesach to Yom Kippur. But where does it say on Erev Pesach, don't do like Pesach? Where does it say in the Torah on Erev Pesach, don't do like Pesach? Right here.
Wait, no.
What?
But this whole thing, it's a xera, isn't it? Not to be the matzah.
It doesn't say Gzera.
No, it's
Doesn't use the word.
Torah.
It says it's apparently it's Minat Torah. Okay, the Rambam, no, but Chazal, because it's not explicit, Chazal told us it. It's like Chazal saying, "Midivrei Chachamim." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is the pasuk here? Here it says, "Barishon ba'arba'ah sar yom lachodesh ba'erev." In the first month, on the 14th ba'erev. That's the same saying the 9th ba'erev. Pesach is the 15th. On the 14th ba'erev, tochilu matzot ad yom ha'echad ve'esrim lachodesh ba'erev. Until the 21st ba'erev. The language that the Torah used to describe Passover, which is 7 days, used the same Erev ad Erev used to describe Yom Kippur, except the 7 days. Instead of just 1 day, it's 7 days. But it starts when? The 14th ba'erev, which means two things. On Erev Pesach, don't do what you do on Passover, which is eat matzah. Secondly, on the 14th ba'erev, start to do what you do on Passover, which is eat matzah. This pasuk grammatically means there is a din of Tosefes Chag HaPesach. And is also the basis for the Vilna Gaon's diuk and the Rambam that the mitzvah of eating matzah continues until the end of the 7th day of Pesach. Everybody knows that the last part. The Rambam and the Vilna Gaon said that the mitzvah of eating matzah continues until the end of the 7th day and the end of the 21st of Nisan. Everybody knows that one, but they forget the diuk at the beginning of the pasuk that it says the arba'ah sar ba'erev tochilu matzos, which means that according to this, just the way this pasuk means, pshat in the pasuk, because that's what meant with Yom Kippur, the mitzvah of matzah starts when you take in Pesach. Entirely against what Rabbeinu Tam and the Tosafos said. Like the Vilna Gaon's trying to tell you, Koach Kush brought them to these two conclusions, but no one ever said that. It's implied in the way the Rambam, for example, who lived before them, understood it that, yeah, Tosefes Yontif and Tosefes Shabbos is a great thing to do. So that's why I've been telling people, you could take in Passover early, and you could start your mitzvah of eating matzah early. And if you're tahor, you could even eat your Korban Pesach early. But if you're not tahor, you have to wait until it's safe to eat your Korban Pesach. But hold on. So there was one last point to say about this, but okay, fine. You ask your question, and I'll say it.
So the reason why the Tosafos
Water, please.
The reason why the Tosafos do not go with starving yourself the whole day before until you bring it in, is because of the Gemara.
Yeah.
Because on a base says you can eat all these other things.
You could technically eat a little bit. Means there's no Isser Achila.
Don't fast,
Yeah.
but like,
Mar
if you're
even-
not gonna fast, don't make
Yeah.
a Suda.
So the Rambam says Mar
Okay.
even, which is not Samim.
I see.
Okay? Samim means no
Okay.
water. It's like I see a cup of water, I want to drink. No, you can't drink. The Rambam says Mar even, which means
Oh.
you could drink cups of water.
Yeah, you can
and-
have like
yeah.
vegetables to like sustain
Yeah,
yourself
eat celery.
up until.
Yeah.
Okay, that is actually way easier to.
Yes. So that's the way the Rambam reads it. Sorry I didn't get to that. But that's what the Rambam is saying. That the Talmud Chacham eats it less. So regular people, they end up eating.
Yeah.
But the Talmud Chacham does this. But there was one last thing to say about that the bomb. That I think that's the bomb. That's the pasuk. That's basically
Yeah.
once you understand that pasuk, you wouldn't have said what the Tosafos say. And so where do you get this? That the Tosafos say this not like the Trump. If you have your pasuk in front of you, you could read this. It says, what did it say? Barishon ba'arba asar yom lachodesh ba'erev tochilu masoth. Tosafos say ba'erev tochilu matzos. They read Barishon ba'arba asar yom lachodesh ba'erev tochilu matzos. They say ba'erev tochilu matzos. The mitzvah of matzah is ba'erev. No. One, Erev, as we saw, many places means afternoon. And two, Barishon Ba'arba Asar Ba'erev means at the end of the 14th day, eat matzos. At the end of the 14th, not Leil of the 15th. Okay? Now, this is another thing. The Rambam, with regards to searching for comments, what does he say? End of the 13th day, when candles work. Because you want to search by candles. Why wait until it says to do Bedikas Chametz? If you live without electricity, you have to light candles in your house even before sunset. That's what the Rambam says. The din is end of the 13th for B'dikas Chametz. I'll close with something that the rabbi said at his Shabbos Hagadol Drush in Hebrew, and then we'll get back to the yomtov thing. He said that there's a lot of anti-Semitism going around. The blood libels are back. If I were an anti-Semite or a Nazi or whatever, I'd be like, yeah, now's a great time to be alive.
Well, they
because-
are like that.
right?
Yeah.
It's come back. It's taken. They're upset that men of my wife's grandfather's generation are, already getting on in their years. So now it's okay to like forget the Holocaust, right? So it's kind of a problem. One of the anti-Semitic canards they have is the line in the Shas that says "Atem kruyim Adam," the Goyim are called Adam.
Yeah.
So does that mean, oh, you're not human? You're human, you're Adam, but other people are not. Rabbi says that's not what it meant in context, because throughout Tanakh and other halachas, they're called Ba'i Olam B'nei Adam. They are B'nei Adam. So what does it mean that Atem Kriyim Adam? It doesn't mean you're human and they're not. It means they are B'nei Adam. The word Adam in Hebrew is only singular. There is no plural of the form Adam. If you want to say humans, you say B'nei Adam. When the Torah says when Chazal say you are called Adam and they're not, it means Am Yisrael are one person, are one Adam, but all the Goyim cannot be called one Adam. They're B'nei Adam. They're plural. What's the Chiddush? The point of this statement? Not that we are better, we're more human, they're not. It means that we are like one living person. When one person Am Yisrael hurts, everybody hurts. When you attack one part of Am Yisrael, you attack all of Am Yisrael. We are one man. Nations, they're separate. You attack Russians, it's they're not Ukrainians, they're not Americans, they're not Chinese, right? That's all.
Here's a
Yeah.
question that goes for the Rumble recording.
Okay.
So
Fine.
the Kuzari lists different beings on a scale, a hierarchical scale, with rocks non-living out at the bottom.
Yeah.
And like
That's
angels
Swiss
for
idea.
that. And he lists Jews on top of other nations.
Well, I'm saying, by the way,
Yeah.
the
That's the-
other,
that's the-
that's a
other,
fact.
other
That's the
Rishonim-
Swiss.
Yeah.
but other Rishonim disagree with him.
Yeah. The Rambam
The
disagrees.
great chain of being.
The Rambam says like the only difference between, and even Sforno says, the difference of love of God between Jews and non-Jews is in amount, not of kind.
Yeah.
Basically, they're both human beings.
But then there still is a difference. in-
Your problem is Yerushalmi said something that could be interpreted as like a little bit Judeo-centric.
Like, I don't know, the Bnei Adam, to me, that's it.
Well, I'm saying people argue with the Christians.
And that's what it sounds like, but you have to explain what Chazal was saying.
Is that really what?
Yes, that's
I-
in
I'm
context.
saying that there may be Rishonim who
Yeah.
would say, no,
But they
that's
would use
actually
it.
what it means.
Okay,
No,
so
in-
I'm trying to
in
say that
context
when
with
Chazal
the-
said
with
that, no,
the-
they didn't mean that.
the
There's
Bar-Hayim.
other reasons for what the Kuzari said. There are other reasons,
But this is
perhaps
his
not
report.
Talmudic, but it's not. This isn't the Makor for that.
Okay.
This may be too large of a digression, but what is the force especially throughout the book of Ezekiel, but also elsewhere prominently in Daniel, of important people being referred to as Ben Adam.
Yeah,
No, no.
or sometimes
what's
it's the
the
same thing as you have in the rest of the books of the Bible, Ish. Okay, every time the Chazal point out, in cases introducing a man, Ish Yehudi, Ish, Ish from Har-Ephraim, what?
Automatically then prophet.
Yeah, or someone a big shot.
Yeah.
Eov, Ishayah, it must have been someone, important. That's what they're trying to say. Whenever you just say, of course he's a Ben Adam, if he's a human and he's involved in the story, he was a man. It was a man.
It's like calling someone a mensch.
Yeah, he was a man.
You don't think there's anything particularly important about, but like the
Potiphar is called an Ish. He's not exactly a tzaddik or a prophet.
No, but the term Ben Adam is used, as far as I can remember, exclusively for righteous people and very pointedly towards Ezekiel in particular.
Are there goyim there he's talking to?
That's true.
Yeah, I don't think that either.
Is the term Ben Adam ever? Can you think of any place where Ben Adam is ever used?
I'm struggling.
Yes.
Certainly
I'm struggling to
very,
remember,
very
but I know
prominent
he knows it.
That
I'll give you the
beginning
first
of-
example.
Oh
Look,
well, kind of have a.
it's in Gracious.
Okay. Yeah.
There's another.
Okay.
Kena Shir Vo B'nei Elohim B'nos Ha'adam. We have B'nos Ha'adam.
Right.
Okay. Heichel Ha'adam. B'nei B'nos Ha'adam. Okay. And in Noah.
Yeah, no, I'm being stupid.
Yeah, it says.
I apologize.
It's okay. You're not stupid. Remember, there's no such thing as stupid questions. Only stupid people.
But be that as it may,
It says here, Red Hashem. Okay. Okay. God came down to see the thing that they built in the Adam. And this is after the birth of whom? The birth of what do you call it? Peleg's son. Peleg. Okay.
Yeah.
Peleg is an ancestor of Avinu. So it says Aver had two sons. Okay. It says here, Aver had two sons, Peleg and Yoktan, right? Aver is the ancestors of the Hebrews. That's us. And after God introduces the Hebrews and the Canaanites and the Egyptians and the Akkadians and the rest of them, he then says they made a big Bavel, and Bnei Ha'adam did this.
Okay.
So Bnei Ha'adam is already there, and there are Hebrews around, but God refers to people as Bnei Ha'adam. So, yeah.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.